Hello and welcome once again to HRN Revive TV. I'm your host today, Arnold Threatt, and we will be continuing with Harvest to Harvest and the things that are associated with it. I'd like to read you a couple of passages this morning so that we are made sure that we're on the right track and we're doing the things that we're doing as far as any preparation. Anything that we do would be according to the will and purpose of our Father who watches over and cares for all of us. I'd like to read you a couple of verses out of Ephesians chapter 6 that puts things in order, and I know most of you are familiar with this, but I'd like to read verses 11 and 12 out of Ephesians chapter 6. He commands us to put on the full armor of Yahweh for you to be able to stand against the strategies of the devil. So without all the armor of Elohim, you and I will not stand. That's what he's saying. He says, for your conflict is not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and those in authority, and with the possessors of this dark world, and with the evil spirits that are beneath heaven. So between us and where our Creator King is, there's this whole realm of activity that's going on that you and I cannot see because it's in a spiritual realm. But he says those are the ones coming against you. And in verse 7, he says, in order for you to be able to stand against that, the whole armor of Elohim is necessary. So for those who may or may not be keeping the teachings and instructions of the Father, that's part of your armor. That's a very important part of your armor, because within the strategy of our Elohim, he gives us his word, his teachings, instructions, his Torah, and for those who want to label it as such, the law, so that we know what our Creator King expects of us. So right across the page in my scriptures, I have another verse I want to read to you, and it's out of Philippians chapter 1, and it's verse 6. It's another very familiar passage. So being confident of this very thing, that the one having begun a good work in you will finish it until the day of Yeshua Messiah. So those two little short passages there would give us a foundation of who we are in Messiah and what he expects of us. So as you and I are looking at Harvest to Harvest, anybody can go on YouTube and find out how to be a prepper and how to store stuff up. This is not what we're about. Again, I make that proclamation because we're looking at doing things a biblical way, so we're looking at eating harvest to harvest, knowing full well that there's certain things that we cannot grow, or it's difficult to grow because we don't have the necessary machinery. Wheat is one of those things. So in order for us to have wheat long term, we store up a little wheat, or we buy it from someone out west that we know that has good wheat. So the things that we're talking about in Harvest to Harvest is the things that you and I can do. So as he commands us to get out of the Babylonian system, we have to make a move. Just like the ones crossing the Jordan River going in the very first time, the water of the Jordan did not roll back until the priest put their foot in the water. You and I have to do our part, and that's put on the full armor of Yahweh, and then claim and stick to the promise that the work he began in us will be finished. So I want to take that understanding to what we're about to look at this morning. And behind me, you see a large, tall green stuff. This is Austrian winter peas. I planted it back in the fall. It's almost ready to be tilled in. There's some little purple blooms on it. They're starting to bloom. In another week or two, I'll be tilling this in. So this is the reason I wanted to do this segment today, so that you could see what a winter cover crop looks like. Now, for those of you who may not know, Harry Vetch is one of the things I planted, and Austrian winter peas are both lagoon plants. That means they take nitrogen from the air and they fix it into the soil by its roots. So with this kind of coverage on an acre of ground, you could look at anywhere from 130 to 140 pounds of nitrogen per acre that's being added back to the soil every time you do this. This is free nitrogen. So you should not have anything, winter or summer, that's not growing something either as a cover crop or food to eat. Now, you see I got two segments here in my garden. This segment I purposely left out and planted all my winter crops. Now, you see here I have brand new row of cabbage. I put those in because they're ready to go out. But just recently, I harvested all the cabbage that I planted that kept over the winter. I also have multiplying onions and I have regular onions. These are almost ready to harvest as well. So I'm always have something growing, whether it's a cover crop or whether there's something to eat. The cover crop is helping my soil back to where I don't have to depend on any commercial fertilizer or very little fertilizer at all. And I usually use a little chicken litter if I have to have some fertilizer. So I'm off of the grid, so to speak, as far as having to buy fertilizers from the system. And you can do the same thing I've done here. It's a very simple process. You could buy enough Austrian winter peas for several seasons and just store them up, put a little diatomaceous earth on them and put them in a sealed container, and the seed germination should be from 75 to 80%. It won't drop much below that. So these are just some things I wanted to share with you today so you can see what we have here. 3 rows of onions, a row of new cabbage. These are multiplying onions, and I want to show you, this is a bunch of multiplying onions. When I planted these last fall, I planted one little bulb. It didn't have a stem on it. It dried up. And this morning, prior to this session, I pulled this out, and that one bulb has produced 8 additional bulbs. Now, what makes these so good is that during the wintertime, when you don't have fresh onions most of the time, unless you live down here in the deep south, you can grow these multiplying onions, and you can go out and pull these away, 2 or 3 off of each cluster, and still have some bulbs that you're going to pull up once these tops go to flower and then start to die. You pull those up, separate them, put them in a cool, dry place where they'll dry, and then next fall you plant these back and you have onions all winter long. So this is part of what some people are doing at their homestead, and they label that as homesteads. Well, we were on a homestead. We did not grow everything we ate, but we grew most everything that we ate. We bartered for what we did not have, which was flour and sugar and some of those things. However, we did have honey, and we did have molasses, which could be used as honey. So those two are things, but it was just convenient to buy sugar. So we bartered or bought sugar from the peddler when he came through. Now, most people who are listening to this are not familiar with it unless you're an old timer like me, and you were living that way. But it was only a little segment of our little piece of land where we did that. Most everybody else was already into what we call public work. They were working for the man and getting money and then going and buying their food. So you weren't any better off. You still didn't have any more money than what you had if you just lived on the farm. So a way of life is what the homesteaders do, and there's a lot of homesteading on the YouTube right now, and a lot of people are doing that, and they're going through that phase of life to demonstrate to others that you can do that. But we too are just simply saying our Creator King gave us the ability the strength and the energy to do what I'm doing and what you can do as well by growing and doing as much as you can for yourself. Now, when I moved here, this was my front lawn. As you now see, I have very little lawn because everything that I have is either grazing for my chickens and my sheep, or I'm growing something on it. Now, I do cut a little grass because my wife likes a little grass, so we have a little grass. But I've raised beds. Most everywhere else are fig trees or mulberry bushes or whatever, blueberry bushes. So we're enjoying this, and we enjoy what we're doing. And if I could get you interested in it, I think you would enjoy it, because he says that we are to eat from the sweat of our brow. Now, that doesn't mean go down to the place where you are a slave to that labor, making somebody else a profit. He's talking about the way we eat, the way we do things. And when we're dependent on the way somebody else grows the food, it may not have the nutrients. But as you see here, and I've often spoke about on Harvest to Harvest, we begin with good dirt. So I just wanted to encourage you again this morning in Harvest to Harvest. And we will be doing a greenhouse section probably in our next gathering, where we're going to be looking at a greenhouse that I put together. Wasn't quite ready today, but it should be ready the next time we get ready to do another session. And we'll be looking at that greenhouse and how you might possibly do your own greenhouse. There's several ways to do it. I just was given a lot of material, so I did it the way I could do it and not cost me much money. So we're going to be covering that in our next session. But I want to encourage you to be the people that our Creator King has called us all to be, and that is to love Him with all the heart, mind, soul, body, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. What better way could we love each other than to demonstrate the way things should be in the garden and how it's going to be when we go back to a garden lifestyle? We will know what we should be doing. So again, thank you for listening. This is Arnold Threatt, and until next time, farewell.